What would happen if you found out that the only real fight you have in this lifetime is with yourself? Let's talk about that. Welcome to When I Stop Fighting, the podcast. My name is Daryl Dittmer. Today I'm joined by Jeannie Comeau. Jeannie is a metaphysician, evolutionary astrologer, and life, soul, purpose coach whose journey took her from 35 plus years as a Fortune 500 global executive in information technology leadership to guiding people toward their most authentic lives. Jeannie's blend of practical leadership and deep metaphysical insight brings clarity, credibility, and a touch of magic to every conversation. She's earned advanced degrees in metaphysical science and holistic life counseling, is an ordained minister, and holds coaching certifications with the John Maxwell Leadership Team and Gallup Clifton Strengths Finder. But what really sets Jeannie apart is her gift for helping people discover who they truly are, uncover their life purpose, and move into inspired action, grounding ancient wisdom in everyday experience. Welcome, Jeannie. Wonderful to have you.
Thank you, Daryl. It's wonderful to be with you, and hello to your audience. I'm so happy to share time with everybody here today.
Thank you. Thank you. We're fortunate we had the chance to meet on another podcast, which I thought was very, very cool. Wonderful experience, both of us, and just getting a chance to get acquainted.
Yes, that is philosophical entertainment on which I'm a co-host. So it was great to meet you there just a little over a month ago.
Yeah, that was very cool. I enjoyed that interaction immensely. So a couple of things caught my eye here. When I was younger, and I know you mentioned you've read some of my first book, and one of the things that got me, because I came from sort of a traditional religious, I'm a recovering Lutheran, and I don't mean that in a disparaging way. If you've enjoyed When I Stop Fighting the podcast, please check out my books and my journals on my website, daryldittmer.com. Enjoy a 15% discount.
But
I was introduced after I got sober to Emmett Fox, and he talked as an author and his books, and he talked about the metaphysical.
Yes.
And I'm like, am I allowed to believe in that? Am I allowed to read about that? Because it goes against, sort of what I was brought up to believe. And so the metaphysical always gets me. And as I looked up the definition, it just means beyond physical, right?
Yes, it means beyond physical, but metaphysics seeks to understand the nature of reality itself. It seeks to answer the question, why are we here? And it seeks to invite us into our own experience. And religions, we'll break right into the conversation of religion. I was raised Roman Catholic all the way through to the point where I had my first confirmation, and Mom said I didn't have to go to church anymore if I didn't want to, but she had already told me that God was everywhere. And so I said, well, why do I need to go there? And so I stopped going there, and that's yet another story. However, God truly is everywhere. And it wasn't until much later in life that I came into all the right folks and the right teachings that brought me into the world of metaphysics. Everything is energy. Everything is energy. Everything is vibration. Metaphysics ties into that. And religion definitely in periods of time in history and coming up has had its role. If we didn't have religion to organize people to some level of faith in spirituality, they'd be void of it, and there would be chaos, because faith is very real, and tapping into your spiritual lessons is needed for the soul. And so religion served a very real purpose, and it still does today for people that feel the presence of the spiritual through the religious teachings. I think that that's wonderful as long as everybody taps into religion. And so I too had come across individuals that were Christian that said, oh, astrology, that's the devil. Oh, metaphysics, no, you're turning your eye away from the Bible. That's really not the true Bible. That's not the message. So not to take on the Bible because it is a sacred text, and I firmly believe and I love all the wisdom in it, but it is the greatest philosophy book that was ever written, right? So there it is in all of the ancient texts. And if we walk away from the literal essence of what the Bible says and we bring it into the allegory, we see the stories. We can even go to Genesis. In the beginning was light. Light, my friends, is consciousness. It is consciousness. Consciousness is that thing that connects us to universal consciousness, to spiritual energy that is everywhere. So there's that word energy again. It's light, it's energy, it's electricity, it's vibration, and everything vibrates. And no, I want to roll, Daryl. I've just got to share this one last part, which is we're comprised of 99.9999, I think there's 4 nines, maybe 6%, air, nothing. The rest is matter. It's all energy. And so a little bit of teaching for the audience. We are not matter. We are vibration. We are energy. We are light. We are conscious beings. We're spiritual beings in a human body. So...
Yeah, 100%. I couldn't agree more. And it's interesting because when I was younger, and we're having our organic conversation, which I love. We'll just see how it goes or where it goes, because I think that's the coolest part. But I felt like, and as I look back, I looked at, and I agree with you 100% as far as religion goes. I think it does wonderful things for people and can do wonderful things for people. There's no doubt. But I look back and I think, when I think about my experience with religion, it was focusing on the outside. It was focusing on the rituals and you have to do this. And if you don't do this, you're in trouble and, you're going to a really bad place. And so there was fear and guilt. And then I started to look at a different way of perceiving me, the real me, the energy me, right? Not the Daryl, the body me, which is I think, it took me a while to sort of get into that way of looking at life and what is real life. And real life is, sort of what's in here motoring around that keeps this meat suit moving around and all that sort of thing, right? It's
absolutely, it's universal consciousness. And so there's many words. So I'll use different ones. Some people don't like to say God. I like God. There's universal consciousness, this source, higher presence. There are many ways to look at it, but there is an omnipresent, omnipotent energy that ties everything together, that has made us. And when we think, if we just look out at nature and we just look at things growing, what makes them grow? When you talk about what's inside of us, it's not my body breathing. It's that energy that keeps my body breathing. And when there's no more purpose for my body, it'll stop. It's just like that. And we'll get into reincarnation later.
No, that's great. So I know we're going to touch on a whole bunch of things, but one of the things I love to do, and I think is so important for people to be acquainted with you, Jeannie, is to tell us a little bit about your story and how you came up and came through and the journey and what brought you to a place where this is what you're so focused on. I think that'll be a fascinating story. I'm excited to hear it.
Okay. Well, it's interesting, Daryl, because on your podcast, this is the first time, so I want all your viewers to know that I've actually aired my story. So I read, Daryl, 60% of your book, and I love the book, and you've got a lot of great sayings. We'll touch on those. But the thing that stood out to me the most was your willingness to be vulnerable and share yourself with others, because we learn through other people's story. And perhaps you experienced this, but I certainly did, where I hid behind my story. I didn't want people to know the truth. There was a time in our country where if people really knew my story, I'd be frowned upon. So what is the story? There's always the parts of it. I'm the fourth of 9 children. 3 older sisters, 5 younger brothers. My dad ended up, unfortunately, being a very severe alcoholic. So we could not count on him. And mom separated from him when I was 8 years old. We left the house that had been foreclosed to the bank and moved into public housing. And the fourth of 9, I seem to, so mom was a single mom. She was a single mom, and she was born in 1926. They made really, I think they make strong women all the time, but she's my hero, just so everybody knows that. You'll hear a lot about mom. We called her Ma. But I became mom's right hand. It just turned out that between the 4 oldest and the 5 youngest, there was a 3-year break of time. And naturally, I fell into the caretaker role. Mom had to work, and so I cared for the siblings. And just to give a very simple view of how responsibility came really early for me. I was 13 years old. I had entered the 7th grade. So that's the middle school. I had left the elementary school. That's how it went in our town. And I had 5 younger siblings, all in the elementary school, all in 1 through whatever grades they were in. And it was PTA night. Mom couldn't make it. She had to work. And she said, Jeannie, you're going to PTA night. And I said, what? And she said, you just go. And I remember, Daryl, how important that moment was, that I picked the best dress. We didn't have a lot of great dresses, but I picked the best dress. I made sure that I would look the part. And I went there, and I had to walk quite a ways to get there. But I got there, and I talked with each and every teacher about each and every sibling, and brought home, their folders. Remember how we did the folders at that time. And the next morning had a very serious conversation with mom over breakfast about what I learned about all the children. And
Wow.
the funniest story I learned was my younger brother, Joey, every peanut butter fluffer sandwich that I made for him to go to school with was shoved in his desk, so he wasn't eating those sandwiches. So I came up as a caretaker early on. I left the home at the age of 18 and got my own apartment, got a job. We lived in public housing. We lived on welfare, dependent children. Just to take it back a step for our viewers, I remember, and there's a song about this, waiting for the welfare check. Well, I had to sit there and wait for the welfare check so nobody would steal it. You see? Very interesting. But I'll tell you, I never felt like a victim back then. So there's mom. She would say, well, Jeannie, you're getting the best upbringing there could be, She had a lot of great sayings, but another one of her great sayings was, your life is what you make it. And she would say that over and over again. Your life is what you make it. Another one was, I didn't raise no sheep. She always say no sheep. I didn't raise no sheep. Right. So when all these great sayings that that instilled in each one of us individually, a sense that we belonged, that we were just as important as everybody else. But needless to say, then you get out into the world. So I, through a grant, thank goodness for grants, right, from the government, I got a $400 grant. I got into junior college. I went in to be a lawyer, and not a lawyer. I wanted to be a lawyer. I thought I couldn't be that. That I don't have the money for that schooling. So I thought I'd be a legal secretary. Well, I could take the shorthand because that was fun, but I couldn't read it. So I said, well, this is not going to work out. And I decided to take the business course. And that's our earlier conversation on business. So I landed in business administration accounting, and I really excelled in that space. So life went on, and I, there's many, many stories in there. But from the upbringing, a lot of people have hard upbringings. Some people can even have hard upbringings when they're wealthy.
Sure.
Wealth doesn't state the story, but to have a strong role model and a strong mentor certainly made a difference as I went on into the world. So that's the short version of it, Daryl.
No, thank you. Thank you for sharing that, Jeannie. Sometimes it was so, when I wrote my books, it was so, I want to say relieving, maybe, to just share and just say, here I am,
Mm,
and like it or not, here's what happened, and what continues to happen, obviously. But there's an
yeah.
element of that I think that's very freeing, right? To tell
Yes,
our stories, especially in light of the fact, and you and I were talking about a little bit before we hit record, that it really is to help people. We really
it
want
is.
to help
Yes.
other people have
Mhm.
a better experience.
Absolutely.
Right?
The sting that stayed with me for very long into my life was coming from the projects. That was just I had friends that couldn't hang around with me because of that. So there was really that. And then I entered the corporate world.
Mm.
And I'm meeting people that had been to an Ivy League college. I remember trying to find in the dictionary what's an Ivy League college. I didn't know, right?
Yes.
And so they'd say, well, where did you go to college? And so I'd name the state school, and that never seemed to really fall. It's like I couldn't seem to get in their crowd. So like everybody, I went through the 20s, I went through the 30s. I'm not going to go all the way to where I am, but I was self-taught. And so I got into technology. And how did I do that? I left the home. I got a job, did the community college, never graduated the community college because the grant only covered 2 years. And I flipped majors after the first semester. So then I didn't have the degree. That didn't help things either. I never seemed to get that either. Because I tried with night school, but work was too much. But I taught myself technology, which is really interesting. I ended up working for an oil company in Boston. I was born and raised in New England, worked for an oil company in Boston, and they had at the time a microcomputer. And there were a lot of cassette tapes. Maybe some of our audience remembers the cassette tapes. And I'd take them home and I'd be listening to them, and I'm reading an operating system manual because I find it really quite interesting. And I want to be able to tip all those lit up buttons and boot the machine. I think that this is really cool. I'm 26 years old at this point, and I'm supervisor of the billing department. So I came up pretty quick. And I remember my mom saying to me, because I was spending Saturday afternoons listening to tape recordings, she's like, you need to be out there, go out there and be with people. And I said, no, Ma, this is more important than that. So I knew that I was responsible for myself, that I had to take care of myself, and that doing these things would help me do that. So, one thing, I've interviewed for a job only once in my life, and that was the job that got me to the company that I learned all about the computers with. Actually, I'm going to take that back, twice in my life, because then I left that company, and from there it was a whole trajectory. Landed in one of the big banks in their financial services technology department for 20 years, SVP. Okay, there's a title, but program management. So this really starts now, Daryl, to come into my story as to where I am. The best part about being a program manager was team success for me. Not for me, but for the team. You see, I could all along feel the energy of the people. And I could feel if people were coming to work with something over them, family situation, tough times out there, and also coming up with certain energies. And so my goal was always to lead the team to success. I happen to be very good at it, and in technology, particularly in management, and lead them to success so that I knew they'd go home feeling better, and then the whole family. See, I didn't even know metaphysics at the time. And so what propelled me through my entire career was working with the teams. And I happen to really like technology. I have a strategic mind. So I really did like that part and program management. And how that got me into metaphysics, because there's so much to talk about,
Mm.
is, not to age me. Anybody can find my age. But Oprah Winfrey, she was tremendous because that was before we had the internet. And she started exposing us to metaphysics in an interesting way and different authors. And so we could buy books. And I was always drawn to astrology. Back from my late teens, I had Linda Goodman's, and that was a best time seller in 1968. But I had her book, Sun Signs. And I used to love to tell people about their astrology, and even Chinese astrology. I get into, well, what year were you born in? And I'd create custom reports and special reports. So I was coaching people all along. I didn't even realize I was doing it, but they loved it, and it was really very helpful. So astrology just seemed to be a hobby at the time. But then there was always that feeling of energy that I felt from other people. So COVID came along. We all have a COVID story. But before COVID came along, I had moved to Florida, and interesting dissect over to the religions for a moment. So I was raised Roman Catholic, left the church, never went back. I was introduced to some people that exposed me to non-denominational Christianity. And I thought that it was wonderful because its message was love. And the fear wasn't there. The fear of Christianity wasn't there. It was more a message of love. And so I went through a number of years with that and did some Bible study groups and went to, had some churches that I would frequent in Southwest Florida, and eventually felt satisfied with that. And that was right around the time I'm coming into different authors. My favorite authors, Catherine Ponder. She was a metaphysician. She prescribed metaphysical treatments to people, sayings. We're going to talk about some of those here today. And I thought, that is so cool. I want to do that. I had no idea how to do that, but I knew that I wanted to do it. Life goes on and work is really busy, but COVID comes along. And it was like August, September of that year. And I went on the internet and I said, how to do metaphysical treatments. And right up popped the University of Metaphysics. And that was the first link, and that's where I went. And the creator, he's now passed on, Dr. Paul Leon Masters. I've learned everything through all of his teachings. They are real. The message that I love of all of them and what tells me it's real is go within. If you're working with any coach, counselor, energy healer, anybody that doesn't tell you to go within for the answers, you're working with the wrong people, my friends. I remember a great quote I heard on Oprah Winfrey, and she talked about going into counseling sessions. I've used counseling, but I crossed the river, and that was her message, and I knew that message. We can either get into a counseling session, so metaphorically, the boat, the canoe, go up and down the river, and people will be just thrilled to take our money, right? Or we can get into that canoe with the right person and know that the destination is the other side. The other side for this journey in life, you see, because life is always going on and there'll always be more journeys. And we may get to that other side and be able to stand tall for some time. And then there may be times where we're going to need to get back into the canoe, but always to cross the river. And so it was COVID, and I entered the University of Metaphysics. And what pulled me in, Daryl? So I'm on a roll. What pulled me in was a program that Dr. Masters had, theocentric psychology. And theocentric psychology is God-centered psychology. It's God-centered living. I wanted it for me. That was really my impetus. I wanted to feel that. I had met a woman years ago who was so in tuned spiritually to her essence that she cried. And I felt the sincerity, and it made me cry to want that feeling of being so close to the energy within me. And I knew that that was an inside job to get there. And so theocentric psychology was my ultimate goal. And in order to get there, all the way up to that, I went through the bachelor's program and I became an ordained minister. I didn't know that that was part of the program, but I've since performed my niece's wedding, and that was beautiful.
Very cool.
Very, very cool. And then I went through the master's in metaphysical science. That was very cool. And because I had not completed college in my whole life, I had to write a thesis for the first time. Well, I had no idea how to do that, 10,000 word thesis, but I certainly did that. And then the next step was the theocentric psychology. And that was right around the time that I knew I was going to leave corporate. It was time. It was time to leave corporate. And I knew, though, that I wanted my PhD in metaphysics because I was going to start my own business. See, there were things happening on the side that was bringing me up to this. Remember, I always wanted to, since I read about Catherine Ponder in 2015, I wanted to prescribe metaphysical treatments. So how do I do that? And that will be the business that I'm now serving humanity through, that we'll talk about. And so I went for a PhD in holistic life counseling, and I currently have that. So holistic. Well, it's the whole of everything, mind, body, spirit. It's the essence of metaphysics. And that's a beautiful thing to have. And just to close off the story, I guess, with the theocentric psychology, in case anybody's wondering, the University of Metaphysics is having a major graduation next year. They haven't had one in 10 years, a cap and gown. And that's in Sedona next year. And I'm currently working on now my 15,000 word dissertation. So this will be my second dissertation, and for that particular degree. So I'm on full trajectory, and I guess I'd close my story by saying it's not where we've been, it's where we are, and it's where we're going. That's where we're going. And truly, I'm blessed for everywhere that I've been. I'm blessed for that childhood because I wouldn't be me. Right.
Right.
Thanks for listening, everyone.
No, that's great. I love it. And I love the additional story stuff, because that's really what an impressive career you had, in terms of just going out there and doing life, and I'm a huge fan. We got to have I love my head in the clouds, but I also like my feet on the ground, because we still have to do stuff. Right?
Yes.
We still have to put food on the table. We still have to do things, right? It's, and I think that's crucially important for all of us. So in terms of your development, because it sounds like with having coming from an alcoholic household, right? And
yes.
that had to affect how you perceived or perceive life going forward, right? Because I think those are, and sometimes what I've found, you have to go to a certain place to want to go to a different place. In terms of, sometimes we have to hit some sort of a bottom. We have to find out, like, hey, I can't do it anymore. I need to surrender. I need to change. Were there moments like that for you throughout this journey?
Yes. And what's interesting is, I read in your book, Daryl, how you had your first drink at the age of 13. And we have that similarity. It was Christmas Eve, but maybe a difference is that I remember sitting there and my mom was sleeping, and I thought to myself, no, this is not what I'm going to do. And I poured it out at the age of 13.
Good for you.
And so I didn't, that never became that. I never had a situation. Well, I'd have the party situation. Certainly there would be the nights where, maybe I shouldn't have had an extra one. Those days are long gone. But more when I was younger. And drugs, the drugs came in, but never strong for me. It was a marijuana thing, and that never hung on. And I think it was more attributed to my mother than anything, and her steadfast, you've got to make your life. And I thought that I would never make my life that way. Cigarette smoking, I saw how you took that on and giving that up. That was a really hard one, but I managed to do that at the age of 24. So I didn't really have that habit for very long. My probably work, a lot of work was my thing, because it kept me focused, it kept me grounded. But then, for the women in the audience, and because this is more of a woman thing, when you have an absent dad, it does something to the women's psyche. You don't have a great male role model. Okay. So where my troubles came in was picking the wrong men, or should I say, letting them pick me and saying, oh, great, somebody wants me, because there's that lack of self-love from a male figure when that's not in your life. And so for all the women out there that might be experiencing that, know that there's a lot online that can talk about that and help you heal that. And I remember there was a singer, her name was Donna Summers, and she's got some great songs, but she's passed on now. She wrote a great story, and she did a great interview about how that was her story. And so, Daryl, here we are telling our stories, and now it's just coming to me that hearing that story from Donna Summers, it was exactly like mine. Helped me so much. It helped me so much, because I understood that was a thing then. I didn't know that was a thing. And so along those lines, I think I've done much better now. But so, yeah.
Life, you had mentioned it earlier, and I know we can expand upon this at any time, but that, life sort of happens, maybe as a result of something that happened previously, or these are the lessons we need this time around, that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I have, I know that there are certain things for me in life that I've had to learn and learn and learn. And, you keep getting the same lesson, right? Until you learn it. But then once you get that lesson, it kind of goes away. Like you don't get it anymore.
It does.
And you mentioned earlier about, who makes the grass grow, who makes things sort of flower and bloom.
Mm-hmm.
It's not me.
No.
I'm not in charge of that. I'm not in charge of the lessons. I'm not in charge of, bringing me to my highest self, whatever that is. Sounds like you feel the same way.
Well,
about that.
I think that this is a great time to bring in evolutionary astrology.
Cool. Let's go.
And the reason is that life evolves us. It evolves us if we choose to be evolved. And I love your message of choice, Daryl. I couldn't agree more. So just to introduce evolutionary astrology to the audience, I am an evolutionary astrologer, and I'm a metaphysician and a holistic life purpose coach. And I round all of these things up into a very unique program. We'll provide the details of the website. The foundation, or the layer that evolutionary astrology must lay on, is reincarnation. Reincarnation, in that our soul lives on. It is the soul that's inhabiting the body. We are a spiritual being in a human body. And the soul comes into a particular lifetime for a reason. And it comes into a particular lifetime to learn lessons that the soul needs to learn. Ultimately, we evolve to the point where we don't have to come back to an earth body, a human form, because we've just evolved. And by the way, those masters, such as Jesus, Buddha, they come back to help us. These are enlightened, evolved masters. However, I'm trying to go to the very essence of evolutionary astrology. You've all heard of astrology. I got to believe that. And you've heard of sun signs. So you might read a sun sign blog where it says, oh, you're a Leo sun. I happen to be a Leo sun. You're a Leo. And Daryl, what's your sun sign?
Sagittarius.
Sagittarius. He is the philosopher seeker. Okay. So you read about the sun sign, you say, that doesn't sound like me. That doesn't sound like me. So first of all, with astrology, your sun is who you are. I don't know. I know it's so itchy. Your sun is who you are. It's your radiant core, but there's much more going on about it that flavors it. And astrology speaks to that. Traditional astrology will have told you, well, you're a Leo sun, so you're these things, and you have the potential to do these not so great things or feel these not so good. Same with Sagittarius. Evolutionary astrology takes a look at your sun and all of your other planets, their positions, and it says, why do I have the chart I have? Why do I have this chart in this lifetime? What energies came in so that I will evolve my soul, I will heal my soul, and eventually I will reach enlightenment, because that's the ultimate. And that enlightenment, we all go back to the one essence. We all go back to the one, which we're all part of the one, but we feel fragmented because we're still going through these life lessons. I can say that in brief. With evolutionary astrology, I can see in a person's chart through what we call the North and the South Node and the Pluto position and Chiron, what wounds came into this lifetime with an individual, and therefore what energies you're faced with. Why do I keep doing that thing? Why do I keep feeling these ways? Why can't I seem to get my life in order? Well, there are cosmic energies that are in your sphere. And with evolutionary astrology, I can show you what they are. I can show you what we call the high road. I can point out where you are at any point in your life. Let's say you're 21, you're 29, you're in your 40s, your 50s, your 60s. What it is you are to be focusing on at that particular point in your life. And the reason that this all happens is not the reason, but I meant to say, the thing that transcends death and rebirth is emotion. And so I talked a bit about the South Node and the North Node. The South Node is a point in the astrology chart that we're all comfortable at. We just want to stay there. That's the thing that keeps us on the hamster wheel. That's the thing that keeps us doing the same things over and over again. But everybody guaranteed, feels a calling for something more. There's something more. I call that the North Star. A lot of people call it the North Star. But in evolutionary astrology, it's your North Node. And Daryl, I'll just because of time, I'll close this message about evolutionary astrology. Everything in your birth chart will play out, whether you know about it or not. It's all happening. It's your music and it's playing. And Maya Angelou's, one of her great quotes, I think, is, when you know better, you do better. When you know your stars, which is my tagline, when you know your stars, meaning when you know your birth chart, and you know what's happening in the sky today that's triggering points in your birth chart, you know what cosmic energies you're dealing with at any particular phase in your life, and you're able to understand it. You're able to understand it from a broader picture. My North Star is over there, my North Node. This is what I came here to do. Now I'm going through this particular time. Okay, I get that now. And I get that it's a period of time. Or I get that I was born with this energy aspect that's going to always make that thing in life difficult for me. But you know what? I know that now. And it's not going to be so difficult anymore. It's only difficult because I chose that as a soul lesson for this lifetime. When you know better, you do better. And this is what I expose through a person's Know Your Stars chart reading. Daryl.
Very, very interesting, Jeannie. Very interesting. there's always been something in me that has, and I haven't pursued it, in any great way, but traditional Chinese medicine that has a lot to do with energies or,
Yes, absolutely.
the astrology. I've bought astrology books, and it's been a long, long time, but I'd read them and I'd be drawn to them, and I'm not sure why, but I think it's
I think
obvious
you were looking for
why.
answers. You were
Right.
looking for
I was
answers.
absolutely looking for answers. And so, I've spent this lifetime investigating a whole bunch of things. I will say, this is a little side note, but in my second book, I talk about northerly and southerly trajectories
Hmm.
and where we're comfortable. And I call it, if we want to head to this place, I call it true north, but
Yeah,
very similar to the North Star.
it's exactly the North Node.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So what are we doing, right? Like in our lives
Mhm.
to get to that North Star or true north or North Node.
And
And
that's where the evolutionary astrology comes in as a life tool of
right,
transformation because it gives us the information that we need.
excuse me.
It gives us the flavor of the information that we need to understand. It's interesting to me. I always see the South Node playing out in a person's life. Absolutely, it's played out, especially in the childhood and in the coming up. And some individuals have moved beyond it and already brought in parts of their North Node, but they haven't quite got there and didn't really know that that's what they were supposed to be doing. So my clients just feel so empowered, so empowered. And, I think I'd love to share this. I think that this is a good time, Daryl. It was just today that I received an email from a client that I read for last November. He's 34 years old. And he writes this: now that some time has passed since the reading, I can say that it was a very great moment for me. It has steered me closer to becoming my best self. Now, I just got to stop there, Daryl, because that's why I do what I do. Okay. That even with those technology teams, that's why I did what I did. You have really helped open many doors here. I'm eternally grateful. Thank you, he says. And I wish that here, just right off the press today. And I wish that those in need may experience some expansion into their true selves. Isn't that
Mm,
beautiful?
that is
Isn't that
beautiful.
beautiful?
I think the interesting thing is I wasn't, and I think many people aren't, when we're young, we're not presented with,
No,
you can move toward whatever, North Node, True North, or
no, I know,
however we want to
right?
refer to it. And that because I feel like we're given this little box of stuff, like, okay, here's what you're allowed to do, here's what you're allowed to believe, here's what our family has believed for 6 generations, and here's your stuff. And
We're told who we are.
right, and we don't know that it's this expansive, it's
More.
expansive without end.
Well, there's a
And
couple points there. We're told who we are. And when we try to say, no, that's not who I am, I'm this,
they shoot you down.
where they shoot you down and they shoot you down and they shoot you down. And we wonder why people lose confidence. And we wonder why, Daryl, people go to substance abuse and whatever other form of escapism because they can't be who they truly are. I Astrology is going to gain more prominence. We're going to see it more and more, and there's many astrological big cosmic reasons why. Which, by the way, if folks sign up for my newsletter, I'm always writing about what are the big energies happening in the sky. This is a time like no other. Conversation for another day. I believe that astrology should be taught in schools. I believe that parents should, and Dr. Masters at the University of Metaphysics, he didn't teach astrology. He knew, and he practiced it, and he didn't believe in astrology until, and there's a story there, but then he ended up reading some 10,000 charts, no, 2,000 charts over 10 years.
Mm,
And he found it amazingly credible. And he said, imagine a child is born and you're able to read for the child, read to the parents for the child, what wounds this child is coming in with and how this child can blossom. We know that through evolutionary astrology, and we can share that for the children. And so in school, one of the things I happen to like uniforms in school only because it takes away the competition. It lets us be more our inner self because we're not that outer thing that we have to wear. And if we know astrology at such a young age, we are so empowered. So empowered. Just me at a young age, knowing that I was a Leo. That's all I knew, that I was a Leo. But just knowing and reading up about all of that was very helpful to me.
So when I'm and I'm just playing this out, but the parents have to be able to withstand this new information, right?
Yeah.
Like they have to be able to buy in and to help their children if this scenario
They have to
plays
be
out.
willing to give up their ego for the child.
Right, and their preconceived notions
That's it.
and embedded beliefs, and I
That's
think
it.
that's the journey, right? Like that's the entire journey of our lives is to, for me, it's been to shed all of these things that aren't true and then
Yes.
find the simplicity in the truth.
Yes. And so can you imagine the relief of coming up as a teenager? And of course we put it into teenager speak, right? The relief of coming up through your 20s and your 30s, of not having to go through the mental machinations of figuring out what you could have already known. What you could have already known.
Right.
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 It's very powerful.
It is very powerful. And not that I've experienced that per se, but I've definitely experienced life, and I've experienced that journey of
Mhm.
discovering and letting go and surrendering and all of these things that have played into
Mhm.
whatever I am today, which is I love what Joseph Campbell says,
Yeah,
that eternity has nothing to do with time,
absolutely.
and eternity is right here. It's
Right
right
here.
now.
It's right here, right now. Now is
Yeah,
the only moment in time, actually.
right.
It's all right here. And I part of my bio on my website, I started out by saying, I had an endless book of endless library of books that I had read, something like that, always going from one to the other. Is the secret here? Always going from one energy healer to another, a Reiki healer, or this healer, or this healer, because I was always working with energy. I just innately knew about energy. And then that didn't seem to help. But it was only when, when I finally connected with myself through theocentric psychology, and then non-denominational Christianity was really very much a lead into that. It was very much a lead into that. And I'll add, it was January of the COVID year. And I decided to, and I don't know why. I mean, I didn't even know COVID was coming. I didn't even know the metaphysical universe was coming, which brings me to the last chapter in your book that I read, which is, we don't know what's yet to be. And I just break off. One of my favorite phrases is, I look at wonder at that which is before me. So that's a metaphysical teacher who's not Florence Scovel Shinn. She's from the 20s. But it was in January, the COVID year, not knowing any of this was coming, Daryl, that I decided to really study my stars. I don't know why. Just really, I thought I'd had astrologers. I'd done a lot of study, and I decided to study it this way. I decided to look back in my life. So in astrology, there are things called transits. The sky is always changing, and there are major phases of life that come with the outer planets. And so I was studying the outer planets and looking back in my life, and I mean, I wrote a book for myself, really. I'm like, you just can't make it up because, oh, yeah, that's when that happened. Oh, yeah, that's when that happened. Now, if I'd have only known, I'm not saying I wouldn't have done those things, but I'm sure I would have done them differently if I'd have known the energy I was dealing with. And if I'd have known my North Star, which, by the way, is very much what I'm doing here today, very much. And I learned that through my own study. In January, February, March of that year, really got to know who I was. I launched my first business. I never really launched it out, but I founded my LLC, and I thought that would be what is happening today. But this is morphed. What I'm doing now today is morphed beyond my wildest imagination as to what I would serve the world with.
Isn't that the
In a
coolest thing
beautiful
ever?
way. Yes. Yes.
How it takes on a life of its own.
Yes.
And for me, and it sounds like for you as well, Jeannie, you start to feel like you're just being led through the
Yes.
process, right?
Mm-hmm.
Seems, and I think that's a beautiful thing. And I have found that to be a beautiful thing in my life because I don't have to grab it and, okay, life, here we go, and I did a lot of that.
Me too.
And I had to do that because I guess because that's the way it happened. But also because that was the only way that I knew. The only way I knew was grab
That
life
was
by the
it.
horns. And
That was it, Daryl.
if I'm not doing it, nobody's going to do it for me. And I think there's an advantage to me to people who don't grow up with things handed to them where
Right.
they have to figure it out. I think that's crucially important to a life where I could look back and say, that was a really cool ride.
Absolutely.
Sounds like you feel that way about your journey.
I do. It's great. It's the whole thing. The whole thing is great. And yet I'm fully aware that our listeners aren't where we are yet. But I certainly, and I know you do too, Daryl, seek to serve as examples.
Absolutely.
As examples that
all I'm here for at this point.
And it's what everybody is to be here for. That's the other important thing. Religion teaches that we ought to serve. That's true. We are only here to serve each other. After all, we are all one. We're all individuals. That is true. And there's a whole conversation behind that, but we all are part of the one. We are our neighbor. And, whatever we think happens. Whatever we think happens. I can't say that enough. Now, I'll go so far as to say, though, it's not like The Secret. If I sit here on the chair and I just think and I visualize really hard that there's going to be a fabulous car out there, that the car is going to appear. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying those fleeting thoughts that come through your mind about you and even others. When you think bad things about others, you are sending them an energy dagger. Just know that. And know this, that dagger comes back. There's a boomerang in the world. It's energy. Energy comes back. So we are here to serve, and we have to be careful what we think about. Think only the positive thoughts, the positive energies, and that's where affirmations come in, which as a metaphysician, part of my practice, also I prescribe metaphysical treatments. That was my original goal, right? And so when I'm working with my coaching clients, we, if I could just share a little bit about my coaching program, Daryl.
Sure, please.
So in my, it's a nine session, and it can take anywhere from 3 to 6 months, depending on the client. Every client is different, but it's 9 sessions. And we start at the very beginning. I interview the client and I understand where the client is at this moment in life. And I write the starting story. And I've collected through the interview the vision of what the client feels they are and want to be. They've got a sense of that North Node, if you will. So I write the starting story. The client gets to edit it. We file it away. We put it away. We go into evolutionary astrology, a couple of sessions on evolutionary astrology. We really reveal who you truly are. And we uncover why you have the chart you have. Very important for the evolution of your soul. And then we move into, because as you were saying, Daryl, it's all about having our feet firmly grounded. We have to be grounded in planet Earth. We're here in planet Earth. And so I work with Clifton StrengthsFinder, and it is an assessment, but it allows us to, I like to say, now we've done your evolutionary astrology. Let's take those stars down to Earth. Let's put them in Earth speak. And I'm able to do that with StrengthsFinder. And the StrengthsFinder report is very helpful for clients to write LinkedIn profiles, to write resumes, to interview. Extremely powerful in terms of tapping into the positive energies that your soul has come forth with, and how you then use them in the world to serve, ultimate serve. And so we move through the strengths, and then I bring the clients into, okay, let's write the history of your 10-year future. So the year is 2035. I am, however old or young, as we get older, we like to say young, you are. And 10 years ago, I decided to really get to know who I am, or whatever phrase the client chooses to put there. And this is what happened. This is what happened. So it's a story. And I write that with the client. And so as the client writes the story, they get to morph out really their path to that North Star, that calling that they felt, but they just couldn't put words to, right? And then we write an action plan. Yes, there's got to be a plan. I'm a program manager. And so program management comes in, and I'm a strategist. So there's a lot of strategy there too. And we then start to work in the life, in the real world, and what's going to be the trajectory over the next 1 to 5 years. How are we getting there? And then there is let's make it happen. So depending on how the client moves through those 9 weeks, sometimes we're at let's make it happen at week 7. Sometimes we don't get there till week 9. But I guarantee all of our listeners, all my clients, that the foundation of everything that comes to you through this experience is life-changing. And it is life establishing. I've seen it with my clients. And so I wanted to share that. That's the full coaching experience. And if you go to my website, everybody, I turn nobody away, can certainly sign up for a complimentary discovery call. Let's just talk about it. And I'm happy to talk to anybody. And along the way, as I said a little bit earlier, of course, are the metaphysical treatments. Everybody's is unique. So I talk about affirmations and visualization and how to do it, etc., to help you along that plan. That's
very cool.
Full program.
Yeah, thank you for
very unique.
That. Yeah, I'm a big fan of, because I had to find this within myself. Do you find that your clients come to you at the point where they're willing to do the work, or do you have to bring them through that process? Or
they come at the point where they're willing to do the work and for the full program. So it's really very interesting. I have clients that sign on for the evolutionary astrology reading, but they're not ready for the full work yet, which is perfectly fine. But that astrology reading really plants a lot of seeds. It really, and so then I've had clients come back and they want to enter the full program after they've gone through the evolutionary astrology reading. But what's interesting, Daryl, is I'm I discriminate. I choose clients. All right. Because I will never be a person that will take anybody up and down the river. I don't believe in it. I will take you across the river. And if I feel that a client just wants to enter a relationship, a coaching relationship, to lament, if you will, and stay in victimhood, I will need to move them on. They're not ready yet. And
Right.
that is perfectly fine. There were times when I wasn't ready. All right. The time just hasn't come yet, but the time will come, and I'll be here. So
I think that's such a profound truth is, people say, I think it goes the same with us. People say, oh, are we headed toward a recession? And I say, well, we're always headed toward a recession if we're
right,
not currently in one. And I think the same thing
right,
happens with people is, if they're not ready yet, they're getting ready.
exactly.
Life is
Yes,
happening, right? And
yes,
that's how it goes.
yes. I have a 72-year-old client, you know, and as long as and it's interesting, I, there's no end. There's no end to transformation.
Right.
It's as long as you're here, transformation is here. It's what life is all about.
Yeah. I couldn't
Mm.
agree more. And I know you and I could continue. We've already been going for a bit now,
Oh
but
yeah, we
so
could.
and thank you for sharing all of your knowledge and your wisdom
You're
and your
welcome.
wonderful your creation in terms of your business and helping people. I will put all of this information in the show notes, but if you could let our audience know how they find you.
Certainly. JeannieComeau.com. JeannieComeau.com. And you'll come into my homepage. Maybe you'd be interested in, first and foremost, signing up for the newsletter. Just skim to the bottom. Come on to we're releasing a new newsletter tomorrow. That's the month of June. And maybe you're interested in an evolutionary astrology reading. Maybe you're interested in purchasing that for someone special. So we do actually have that as well, where you can purchase a gift for someone. Maybe you're interested in talking with me about what's possible. And I'm always available for that as well. So I look forward to communicating with each and every one of our listeners, whichever way works at this moment in time. And if now is not the time, then when the time is right.
That sounds great, Jeannie. Thank you.
You're
I'm
welcome.
personally, I am very intrigued with the evolutionary astrology.
It's amazing.
I've spent a lifetime exploring and learning and being, in wonder of everything that's going on and
Mm,
trying to learn as much as I can. And evolutionary astrology is something that I really don't know anything about. So I'm
it's
probably
very
going to have to
powerful.
dive in myself.
Excellent. Well, I could go on, but I'll let you close us out.
Thank you so much, Jeannie.
Thank you. Thank you,
Really,
Daryl.
really,
It's been a
really,
pleasure.
it has been a pleasure, and I'm sure we'll be in touch. We'll be talking soon.
Wonderful. Bye-bye now. Bye,
Be well.
everyone. Bye.
Bye-bye. If you've enjoyed When I Stop Fighting the podcast, please check out my books and my journals on my website, daryldittmer.com. Enjoy a 15% discount by using the code PODCAST, DARYLDITTMER.com. Thanks again.